My name is Logan Price. I'm 22 years old, and I just graduated with a degree in criminal justice from the University of Colorado Springs. I've always believed in structure, discipline, and integrity. Values I thought I learned from my father, Edward Price, owner of an import business and a respected figure in our local community. After my mother passed away when I was 17, I lived with him and my stepmother, Cheryl, in their house while attending college. I helped with household chores and holiday preparations, mainly to save money while working part-time and studying. It seemed like a normal arrangement. Father and son under one roof, building toward the future. But there was something in the air I couldn't quite explain, a tension I kept ignoring. Over the previous 2 years, starting when I turned 20, my dad had me sign a series of documents. He said they were authorizations for student loans or corporate credit cards to help me build credit. I didn't question it. After all, he was my father. Why would I doubt him? If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. It was Christmas night, December 2024, when everything changed. I was setting the table with Cheryl, arranging plates and silverware for our holiday dinner. The house smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon. Everything felt normal, peaceful even. Then my phone buzzed, a text message from an unknown number, short and direct. "Leave now, don't say anything, especially not to your father." I stared at the screen. My first instinct was to think it was a prank, some kind of sick joke, but something about the tone made my stomach drop. It wasn't playful. It was urgent, almost desperate. I looked up. My dad was in the living room, adjusting the Christmas tree lights. Cheryl was beside me, quiet as always. She glanced at my phone, then at me. Her expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or fear. "Logan, you okay?" my dad called from the other room. I swallowed hard. "Yeah, just need some air." I grabbed my coat and walked out the front door without another word. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what I was doing or why I was listening to a random text, but every instinct told me to move. I got into my 2018 Honda Civic and drove 2 blocks before pulling over. My hands were shaking. I tried calling the number back. No answer. I sat there in the cold, watching my breath fog up the windshield, wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. Then I saw them. Black SUVs rolling down the street toward my father's house. Unmarked, but unmistakable. Federal agents. They surrounded the house within minutes. I watched from a distance as men in tactical gear moved into position. My phone rang, same unknown number. "Stay where you are, someone will come get you." 20 minutes later, a sedan pulled up beside me. A woman in a dark suit stepped out. FBI. She showed me her badge and asked me to come with her. I didn't argue. I couldn't. They took me to a secure location downtown, a bland office with fluorescent lights and cheap coffee. That's where I learned the truth. My father wasn't just an import businessman. He was running a weapons trafficking operation, laundering money through shell companies and evading taxes on an international scale. And he'd been using my identity to do it. Every document I signed, every credit card I applied for, every business entity registered in my name, it was all part of his scheme. I was the fall guy. The paper trail led back to me, not him. But the worst part? He wasn't planning to let me live long enough to figure it out. The agent sitting across from me was calm, methodical. Her name was Agent Dawson. She had a folder in front of her, thick with documents. My documents, or at least papers with my name on them. "Your stepmother came to us 6 months ago, back in June," she said. "She found irregularities in your father's records. Bank accounts, wire transfers, shipments that didn't match the business model. She started digging, and what she found scared her." I felt numb. Cheryl, the woman who barely spoke at dinner, she'd been working with the FBI this whole time? "She was afraid for you," Agent Dawson continued. "She knew Edward was setting you up. And when we uncovered his endgame, we realized we had to move fast." What endgame? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Agent Dawson slid a printed email across the table. It was from my father's private server. The subject line read, "Final phase, January departure." I read it twice, then a third time. My father was planning to disappear, leave the country with millions in illicit profits. But before he left, he intended to stage my death. A car accident, most likely. Something believable, something that would erase the paper trail and leave investigators with a dead end. Literally. "He was going to kill you," Agent Dawson said quietly, "and use your death to close the loop. No witnesses. No liability, just a grieving father fleeing the country to escape his sorrow." I sat back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. My father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, the man who paid for my college application fees, the man who was going to murder me to cover up his crimes. "We've been monitoring him for weeks," Agent Dawson said. "Tonight was supposed to be his last night in the country. He had a private flight booked out of a regional airport in New Mexico for tomorrow morning. Cheryl tipped us off when she saw him packing." I looked at her. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because we couldn't risk him finding out. If Edward suspected you knew, he would have moved up his timeline. We needed him to feel safe, comfortable. That's why Cheryl stayed in the house. That's why we waited until tonight." I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream. But all I felt was cold, empty. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we need your help. You signed those documents. You have access to his files, his communications, his routines. We need you to walk us through everything you know. Every detail, no matter how small." I spent the next 6 hours in that office. I told them about the paperwork, the credit cards, the times he asked me to receive packages at the house. I gave them access to my email, my phone records, everything. I didn't hold back. Not anymore. The investigation moved fast after that. With Cheryl's initial testimony and my corroboration, they had everything they needed. Bank records showed shell companies registered in my name funneling money through offshore accounts. Shipping manifests revealed arms deals disguised as industrial equipment imports. Email chains connected my father to international buyers, brokers, and fixers. It was a network, a well-oiled machine, and I was supposed to be the disposable part. Edward Price was arrested that night. No bail, no plea deal. Federal prosecutors threw everything at him. Racketeering, weapons trafficking, money laundering, identity theft, conspiracy to commit murder. The charges were staggering. The evidence was ironclad. Because the case against my father was built on months of surveillance, witness cooperation, and documented evidence, the Department of Justice fast-tracked the trial. With testimony from Cheryl, myself, and multiple cooperating witnesses, plus forensic accounting that laid everything bare, there was no room for delay tactics. The trial lasted 3 weeks in February 2025. I attended every day. I sat in the back row, watching him try to maintain his composure. He wore expensive suits. He spoke calmly to his lawyers. He never once looked at me. Cheryl testified. I testified. Former business associates flipped and testified. By the end, there was nothing left of the man's defense. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. He'd spend the rest of his days in a maximum security facility, surrounded by the kinds of people he used to profit from. When the sentence was read, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just a dull, persistent ache. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. My name had already been all over local news, and within hours, threads about the case were trending on X. Someone even made a TikTok breaking down the timeline. I avoided all of it. I kept my head down, walked to my car, and left without giving statements or answering questions. The fallout was immediate. Edward Price's name became synonymous with fraud in Colorado Springs. His business collapsed. Assets were seized. Properties were auctioned off to pay restitution to victims and cover legal fees. Business partners distanced themselves. Friends disappeared. The man who once gave speeches about responsibility and integrity was now a cautionary tale, a headline, a mugshot. And me? I was left to pick up the pieces of a life I never asked for. The weeks after the trial were strange. I moved out of my father's house. It wasn't really his anymore anyway. Federal agents had stripped it down to the studs during their investigation. Cheryl moved in with her sister in Denver. We stayed in touch, but things were different now. She'd saved my life, but we were both haunted by the same ghost. I finished my last semester of college in a kind of fog. My final classes ended in May 2025. Professors knew what had happened. It was all over the local news. But no one brought it up directly. I appreciated that. I didn't want pity. I didn't want understanding. I just wanted to graduate and move on. In May 2025, I walked across the stage and received my diploma. My criminal justice degree felt heavier than it should have. I'd studied the law, the system, the theories of justice. But nothing in those textbooks prepared me for what it felt like to be on the wrong side of a criminal conspiracy orchestrated by your own father. A week after graduation, I received a phone call. It was Agent Dawson. She told me that the Bureau's Counterterrorism Division had been following my case closely, and that she'd recommended me for a special recruitment track. They were looking for candidates with technical skills, investigative training, and direct experience cooperating with federal law enforcement. This isn't the normal process, she said. But your situation isn't normal either. If you're interested, I can put you in touch with the right people. I didn't hesitate. I said yes. The formal interview process still required background checks, polygraph tests, and psychological evaluations. But Agent Dawson's recommendation opened doors that would normally take years to access. They wanted to make sure I wasn't damaged goods, that I could handle the pressure, that I wouldn't crack under the weight of what I'd been through. I passed every test. By July 2025, I was in Quantico, Virginia, attending the FBI Academy. The training was brutal. Physical conditioning, firearms qualifications, tactical simulations, legal studies. But I thrived. For the first time since that Christmas night, I felt like I had a purpose. I wasn't running from my past. I was using it. Every case study we analyzed, every scenario we role-played, I saw my father's face. I saw the shell companies, the forged documents, the lies. And I understood how people like him operated. How they manipulated systems, exploited trust, and destroyed lives without a second thought. The Academy training program runs for several months, and I'm currently still in the middle of it here in September 2025. I've already completed my firearms qualifications and tactical training. The legal studies and field exercises are intense, but I'm keeping pace with my class. My assignment after graduation will be to a field office, likely working financial crimes and counterterrorism cases. My job will be to track money, identify networks, and dismantle operations before they can do damage. It's exactly where I need to be. During one of our case study sessions, we analyzed a group funneling money to overseas militant organizations through a series of front businesses. The structure was eerily familiar. Shell companies, forged contracts, fake invoices. It was my father's playbook, just with different names. I presented my analysis to the class. I walked them through the paper trail, the red flags, the patterns that indicated money laundering and weapons trafficking. When I finished, the instructor nodded. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need in the field, he said. I never visited my father in prison. He sent letters at first, starting in March. Short, vague messages that tried to sound remorseful without actually apologizing. I never opened them. I had them forwarded to Agent Dawson, just in case they contained anything relevant to ongoing investigations. They didn't. By summer, the letters stopped coming. Cheryl and I talked occasionally. She'd moved on with her life, started working as a consultant for nonprofit organizations focused on financial transparency. She told me once that she still had nightmares about that night, about what could have happened if she hadn't acted. I couldn't let him hurt you, she said during a phone call in August. You were just a kid. You didn't deserve any of this. I told her I didn't blame her. I thanked her. I meant it. But the truth was, I didn't think of myself as a victim anymore. I'd been used, yes, manipulated, betrayed, nearly killed. But I survived. And more than that, I turned the worst moment of my life into something that mattered. I wasn't defined by what my father did to me. I was defined by what I chose to do afterward. People ask me sometimes if I ever feel angry, if I wish things had gone differently, if I regret not seeing the signs sooner. The answer is complicated. Yes, I'm angry, but not at myself. I was a kid trying to trust his father. That's not a crime, that's not a failure, that's just life. And as for regret, I don't waste time on it. I can't change the past, but I can make sure the future is different. For me, and for everyone else who might end up in the crosshairs of someone like Edward Price. My work at the FBI won't be glamorous when I start in the field. It'll be paperwork, databases, endless hours staring at spreadsheets and transaction records. But every case I'll help close, every network I'll help dismantle, I'll think about that Christmas night. I'll think about the text message that saved my life. I'll think about the choice I made to walk out that door. And I'll be reminded that the best revenge isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, it's simply living well, living with integrity, and making sure that people like my father face the consequences they deserve. Less than a year has passed since that night. I'm still 22, still training at Quantico, still building the foundation of what will become my career in federal law enforcement. And every single day, I think about how close I came to being on the other side of that investigation. Not as a witness, as a victim, a statistic, a cautionary tale buried in some prosecutor's file. But I'm not. I'm here. And that matters. Last week I got a notification from the Bureau of Prisons. My father had been transferred to a different facility, some administrative shuffle. I didn't care enough to look into the details. He was gone. That's all that mattered. I deleted the email and moved on. The hardest part of all this wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't even the fear. It was the silence. The years I spent living in that house, eating dinner across from a man who was planning my death, and never knowing. The smiles, the small talk, the casual cruelty of normalcy. How do you process that? How do you reconcile the father who taught you to tie your shoes with the man who forged your name on documents that could have sent you to prison? You don't. You just accept that people are complicated, that even the worst monsters can look like ordinary men. And that trust, once broken, doesn't heal. It scars, but scars are proof you survived. I keep a photo on my desk in my dorm room here at Quantico. It's from my college graduation in May. I'm standing outside the auditorium, holding my diploma, smiling. Cheryl took the picture. She's not in it, but I know she's there, just out of frame. That photo reminds me of two things. First, that I made it. I finished what I started, despite everything. And second, that I didn't do it alone. Cheryl saved my life. Agent Dawson gave me a path forward. My professors, my classmates, the people who believed in me when I barely believed in myself, they all played a part. I owe them more than I can ever repay. A few weeks ago, during a training exercise, we analyzed a case involving a father and son running a Ponzi scheme out of a family accounting firm. The son had no idea what his father was doing. He'd been signing documents for years, thinking he was helping the family business. When investigators finally brought them in, the kid was devastated. According to the case file, he kept saying, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I believed him. After we finished the analysis, I stayed back and talked to the instructor. I didn't tell him my full story. I just told him that cases like these hit differently when you understand what it's like to be manipulated by family. He looked at me and nodded. That's why you're here. That perspective matters. Because I know what it's like to have your life ripped apart by someone you trusted. I know what it's like to wonder if you'll ever feel normal again. And I know that survival isn't about forgetting. It's about moving forward, one step at a time. People ask me if I'll ever forgive my father. The answer is no. Forgiveness isn't something I owe him. It's not a box I need to check to move on with my life. He made his choices. He lived with the consequences. That's justice. And justice, for me, isn't about revenge. It's about restoration. It's about taking the wreckage of what was and building something better. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not bitter. I'm not haunted by what could have been. I'm just focused on what is, on the training I'm doing, on the career I'm building, on the networks I'll help dismantle once I'm in the field. Every lesson is a small victory. Every skill I master is a reminder that the system, for all its flaws, can work. That people like my father don't get to win just because they're clever or ruthless or willing to sacrifice their own children. They lose. And people like me get to be the reason why. I don't think about my father often anymore. He's a chapter in my life that's closed, filed away, done. But when I do think about him, I don't feel sadness. I don't feel rage. I feel something simpler, something quieter. I feel grateful. Grateful that I got out. Grateful that Cheryl acted when she did. Grateful that I had the chance to turn my pain into purpose. Because in the end, the greatest revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's refusing to let them define you. It's taking the worst thing that ever happened to you and using it as fuel to become something better. My father tried to destroy me. He failed. And every day I wake up, train, and prepare to help dismantle networks like his, I prove that he failed. That's my revenge. Not loud, not dramatic, just persistent, methodical, effective. And in the end, that's the kind of revenge that actually matters. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment letting me know what you think. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.